Yeah, my name is Bruce Huckell. I'm an archaeologist at the University of New Mexico, and we're here today to talk a little bit about flintknapping and how stone tools are made, and to demonstrate the ways in which the pre-Hispanic folks were working stone and creating the tools that they needed for a lot of their daily life. One of the best places to start is to take a look at some of the raw materials that they counted on for the manufacture of tools. One of the raw materials that we find that is pretty abundant is a material that comes in a variety of colors and piece sizes, and it is ultimately called paternal chert. And this particular chert comes from the Jemez Mountains, the northern end thereof, and it is a fairly good raw material for making all sorts of tools. Another raw material that was used prehistorically is obsidian. Obsidian is a volcanic glass, and it works just like bottle glass does today. It is usually, in our area, a dark color, usually black, sometimes slightly translucent, and it is an extremely fragile material. That is to say that it fractures very easily, which can be a boon when you're doing the manufacture of the tool, but it also means that when you're actually using the tool, the wear to the edge will occur faster because the edge is so delicate it will crush more readily. With both the obsidian and with paternal chert, it's possible that the inhabitants of Tijeras Pueblo could have gone to the mountains to obtain some of this stone directly from the primary outcrops. They could also have traded with groups that lived nearer the sources for paternal chert and the obsidian, or they could have found smaller pieces in the local area, essentially just by hiking down Tijeras Canyon to the area within, say, about a quarter mile or so of the modern Rio Grande Valley. Tijeras has cut through ancient alluvial deposits of the Rio Grande, in which pebbles of obsidian and pebbles of the paternal chert can be obtained. The actual flaking of stone can be accomplished using, in this case, a well-rounded pebble or cobble of quartzite, and this is a block of the paternal chert. The basic rule in flintknapping is that wherever you have two surfaces that intersect at an angle of a little less than 90 degrees, you can strike a blow to this surface, which will drive a flake off of this surface. So a blow struck here will drive a flake off here. Let's see how that works. So here's a flake that's split when it was detached. You can see the point at which the blow was struck. You can see the scar that was left by the detachment of this flake. And see how it fits back on. So that is the kind of basic knapping, the basic production of flakes that begins the stone tool making process. Just as these flakes come off of the core, they can have very thin, very sharp edges, and they are perfectly useful in this condition for a variety of cutting tasks. This is the interior surface of the flake, which is characterized by a relatively smooth surface, but you'll notice that there's a very large rounded bump right here. It's just below the striking platform, and this is what's known as the bulb of percussion. If you think about a plate glass window that has been impacted by a BB, on the exterior surface of the glass you'll have a little small ring, but as that fracture goes through the pane, it actually expands and drives out a cone of glass. And if you think about this bulb of percussion as a portion of a cone, that is exactly the way in which the fracture begins with this hammerstone percussion. The blow is landed right here, so you have a small point of impact with a rapid expansion of force, and this is your cone. In technical terms, it's called a Hertzian cone, and this cone actually begins as the primary fracture, but it transitions into this much flatter and more sheet-like fracture. And if you look at the flake in profile, you can see that it creates a relatively thin, long piece with the interior parallel to the exterior surface. So the two products that we create in the flintknapping process are flakes, the pieces that are struck from the original nodule. And once we have struck flakes from this original piece, this is now what we call a core. So you can see the previous flake scars that show us that at least, in this case, 2 flakes have been removed from this particular core. So a blow to detach a reasonably large obsidian flake can be lighter, and you can produce flakes that look like this. One of the artifacts of flake stone that we find at these pueblos are small arrow points, and they are made by a different process. Instead of actually striking a percussion blow to the stone, in this case we use what is called pressure flaking. It's done with the tine or outer portion of the branch of a deer antler, and it is done with a small flake, one of the ones that we knocked off of the obsidian core with the hammerstone, and it is done using a piece of leather which is designed to protect your palm. The flake to be made into the arrow point is held, clamped between the fingers and the leather pad, and instead of striking a blow, the tip of the antler tine is placed against the edge of the flake. So it's a simple move of applying pressure inward and downward, and all you're doing is removing very small flakes like this. This is the flake at an intermediate stage of manufacture. The pressure flakes that I have removed thus far, I have focused on trying to remove from the interior surface of the flake where the bulb of percussion was and where the striking platform was. You can see that we're getting into a triangular shape to the point which is what we wanted to see. And we are getting flakes now that go from the edge all the way across, or meeting flakes coming from the other side. So we have created what we would call a projectile point preform. That is to say, it is partly down the path to being a finish point. And in addition, we have created what is called a biface. And that simply refers to any piece of stone where you have flakes removed from two surfaces, in this case the exterior and the interior surface. So all arrowheads and spear points are by definition bifacially flaked tools. So what we're going to continue to do now is to create a more regular triangular shape, remove the last bits of cortex from the exterior surface, and then we will thin the base, make it a concave in order to facilitate hafting it onto an arrow. Well, we've done a little bit more refining of the point preform now. So it has assumed a fairly triangular shape. We have continued to push flakes from both margins across the point preform. We've removed the last little bits of cortex there. And as you can see, it's fairly close to being finished. What remains to be done is to thin and sharpen the tip, get the edges just a little bit more regular, and then put a concave base on the thing, and then we'll have a point that is ready to be tied on to an arrow. Well, this is now a finished arrow point. It is just a simple triangular form with a concave base. We have placed the base of the point at the area where the old striking platform and bulb were. So that area required a fair bit of thinning. We would now be ready to haft the thing. As you can see, it's relatively uniformly thin now, and it's thin enough at the base to be able to slip into the notched end of the arrow shaft. And you could either use some sort of a mastic or glue to attach it, or you could just wrap it with small strands of sinew, bits of dried tendon from an animal carcass. Arrow points like this are relatively delicate. They, generally speaking, are not the kind of thing that you resharpen. They are good until they hit something hard and then break and or crush. So it's very common to find these things after they have been brought back to the Pueblo and removed from the arrow shaft, and you'll find the base, the snapped off tip of the point. Maybe one of the basal corners will have been broken as well. But generally, despite the fact that you spend on the order of 10-15 minutes making one of these things, they're pretty much not designed to be resharpened. So once you break one, you simply make a new one, and assuming that the arrow has survived the use, it's a very easy matter to replace the point. The point is always what we as archaeologists tend to value, but prehistorically the folks probably valued the arrow more because the wooden and cane portions of that arrow represent far more work than these little arrow points do.